Camping in the woods is supposed to be peaceful, a way to escape the noise of everyday life and reconnect with nature. But when night falls, and the fire burns low, the forest changes. The silence becomes heavier, the shadows feel closer, and sometimes you realize you're not as alone as you thought. These are 5 terrifying true camping horror stories, each one a reminder that the woods hold secrets we may never understand. This first story is about 2 friends in the Smoky Mountains who discovered that the scariest thing in the wilderness isn't always an animal. Story 3. The Man Without Light. The Smoky Mountains are beautiful by day, rolling ridges, mist rising like smoke from the valleys, and endless green stretching as far as the eye can see. But when night falls, beauty turns to isolation. Out there, far from towns and trails, the dark doesn't feel empty. It feels alive. We were camped deep in the backcountry, miles from the nearest road. It was just me and my friend Alex, both of us used to hiking, both confident enough to believe nothing could really shake us. We'd spent the day climbing, fishing, and laughing about how city people always imagined the woods were scary at night. By 2 in the morning, the fire had burned low, leaving only a circle of glowing embers. The silence was heavy, pressing down like a blanket. I lay awake in my sleeping bag, staring at the tent ceiling, when I heard it. The crunch of footsteps on leaves. At first, I thought it was a deer. The sound was slow, deliberate, almost cautious. But then it stopped, and after a long, drawn-out pause, it started again, closer this time. I held my breath, waiting. Then I saw it. Through the thin fabric of the tent, I could make out a faint silhouette moving just outside. A man. He wasn't running. He wasn't even walking casually. He was approaching, step by careful step, like someone stalking prey. My heart hammered as I reached over and shook Alex awake. There's someone outside. He sat up, groggy at first, until he heard the crunching too. His eyes widened, and he mouthed a single word, bear. But I shook my head. It wasn't a bear. Bears don't walk upright. We unzipped the tent just enough to peek outside. That's when we saw him. A man stood among the trees, maybe 30 feet away. He held a flashlight in his hand, pointed straight at us. But the light wasn't on. The beam was dark, useless, yet he gripped it tightly, aiming it like a weapon. We froze, neither of us knowing what to say. Finally, Alex called out, "Hey, do you need help?" No answer. The man didn't move. He just stood there, the dark shape of his flashlight aimed toward our camp. "Are you lost?" I added, my voice cracking. Still nothing. Then, slowly, he began to walk forward, not stumbling, not confused, but deliberately, as if every step was calculated. The dead beam of his flashlight swung closer, closer, until he was right at the edge of our firelight. That's when I saw his face. It was pale, unnaturally so, like skin that hadn't felt sunlight in years. His eyes were wide open, unblinking, locked directly onto ours. And his mouth was stretched in the faintest hint of a smile, as if he knew something we didn't. For what felt like forever, he just stood there, inches from the glow of our dying fire. We didn't move, neither did he. The forest was silent, as if even the insects were holding their breath. Finally, without a word, he turned, slowly, deliberately. He walked back into the trees, the useless flashlight still dangling in his hand. Within seconds, the shadows swallowed him whole. We sat frozen until the first light of dawn. Neither of us dared to sleep. When the sun finally rose, we packed our gear in silence and started back toward the trailhead. It took hours, but when we finally reached the parking lot, relief washed over us, until I noticed something in the mud by the edge of the lot. Footprints. Barefoot, human footprints. Dozens of them, pressed deep into the earth, leading from the woods to the asphalt. Alex saw them too. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. We both knew what we were thinking. The man we saw had never been carrying a flashlight. He had been carrying something else. And whatever it wasn't meant to light the way. Story 2. The voices in the dark woods. The woods in northern Montana have a way of making you feel small. The trees there don't just grow, they tower. Old giants, thick and endless, blotting out the sky so completely that even in daylight the ground feels dim. At night, it becomes something else entirely, a cathedral of shadows, where every sound echoes and dies, swallowed by the dark. We had been camping for 2 nights in that wilderness, far off the grid, with no one else for miles. It was supposed to be an escape, a week without cell service, without traffic, without the constant noise of daily life. Just us, a fire, and the steady rhythm of the forest. There were 3 of us, myself, my cousin Derek, and our mutual friend Tyler. On that second night, the fire was burning low, and we sat around it in silence. The only sounds were the occasional pop of sap in the flames and the wind moving faintly through the treetops. It was close to midnight when it happened. At first I thought I was imagining it. A faint, high-pitched sound, drifting through the trees. Then Derek's head snapped up, his eyes wide. "Did you hear that?" We all listened, and there it was again. Laughter. Not the deep laugh of an adult, but light, playful giggling. Children's laughter. For a moment, none of us spoke. We just sat frozen, staring into the blackness beyond the firelight. Out here, 20 miles from the nearest town, there should have been no children, none at all. Tyler tried to brush it off. It's the wind. Sometimes it whistles through the trees, makes weird noises. But we knew it wasn't the wind. The laughter was too distinct, too human. It came in bursts, like a game being played somewhere in the dark. Giggling, followed by whispers we couldn't quite make out. The sound grew clearer, louder, and it wasn't stationary, it was moving. First it drifted from the left, then the right, then directly behind us. It was as if invisible children were running around our camp, circling us just outside the fire's reach. My skin crawled. I gripped the flashlight beside me, half afraid of what I might see if I turned it on. Finally, Derek stood up, his nerves snapping. "I'm not sitting here waiting, we need to check." Reluctantly, we grabbed our lights and walked toward the direction the laughter had last come from. The beams cut through the trees, bouncing off trunks and branches, but there was nothing there. Just silence. We pushed further, maybe 50 yards from camp, until we found nothing but dirt, roots, and the fading echo of our own footsteps. For a moment we almost convinced ourselves it had been nothing, just nerves, just the forest playing tricks. But when we turned back toward camp, my stomach dropped. In the soft dirt, illuminated by our flashlights, we saw our footprints leading away from the fire. But alongside them were others, smaller, barefoot, tiny footprints, circling back and forth, weaving around ours. Derek's voice shook. No, that's not possible." Before any of us could react, the laughter returned. But this time, it wasn't distant, it wasn't moving, it was right behind us. We spun around, lights sweeping wildly across the trees. Nothing. The forest was empty, silent, yet I swear I could feel something there, standing just out of sight. We ran, no hesitation. Back to the camp, back to the fragile safety of the fire. None of us spoke as we huddled together, waiting for dawn. The laughter never returned, but the sense of being watched never left. When the morning came, we examined the ground again. The prints were still there, small, clear, undeniable. They led in circles around our camp, then vanished into the trees, as if whatever had made them had no need to leave a trail. We packed up and left that very day. The silence of the woods, once peaceful, now felt suffocating, like something was holding its breath, waiting. To this day, whenever I close my eyes, I can still hear it. That high-pitched, playful giggling drifting through the dark. And the worst part is, sometimes I wonder, if we had followed those footprints just a little further, would we have found out who was laughing, or would we have joined them? Story 1: The tent that nobody put up. The forest in Colorado is a different world when the sun goes down. During the day, the tall pines and distant mountain ridges are almost welcoming, their silence broken only by the faint rush of wind or the occasional bird. But at night, the silence deepens. It becomes heavier, almost suffocating. The shadows seem to breathe, and every sound feels amplified. The snap of a twig, the rustle of leaves, the uneven rhythm of your own breath. That was the setting on our first night. There were 3 of us, myself, my college friend Daniel, and his younger brother Chris. We had decided to take a week-long camping trip in the back country, far away from the marked trails and buzzing tourists. Daniel was the outdoorsman of the group, the one who insisted we hike deep into the wilderness where there would be no one but us and the endless forest. By the time we had set up our camp, the sun was already slipping behind the jagged peaks. We wanted firewood before the night grew too dark, so we split up slightly, staying within earshot but covering more ground. That's when Chris called out, "Hey, you guys gotta see this." We followed his voice and found him standing in a small clearing. In front of him stood a tent, old, weather-beaten, sagging under the weight of time. Its one-screen fabric had faded to a sickly gray. Holes gaped where the seams had ripped, and one of the aluminum poles was snapped in half, leaning awkwardly. Moss clung to the edges, and a faint smell of mildew hung in the air. None of us spoke for a few seconds. It wasn't the tent itself that unsettled us, but the feeling it carried. Like walking into a room you know has been locked for years, yet finding fresh footprints inside. Daniel broke the silence. Probably just abandoned. Hunters or hikers leave their junk all the time. Chris poked it with a stick, making the whole thing shudder. Yeah, well, whoever left this has been gone a long time. No one's coming back for it. We laughed it off, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Still, we went back to camp with our firewood, the image of that decaying tent following us like an unwanted shadow. That night, as we sat around the fire, I kept glancing toward the direction of the clearing. The forest was pitch black, but in my mind, I could still picture it. The sagging shape, sitting in silence among the trees. Eventually, exhaustion pulled me into sleep. The next morning, Chris was the first to crawl out of our tent. I heard his sudden intake of breath. Guys, what the hell? I unzipped the flap and stepped outside. My heart stopped. There, just a few feet away from our extinguished campfire, stood a tent. But not ours. It was the tent. The same one from the clearing, except it wasn't old and rotting anymore. Its fabric was clean, stretched tightly across its frame. The poles stood straight and strong. It looked brand new, as if someone had just pitched it overnight. None of us had moved it. None of us had even touched it. Yet here it was, standing beside our fire, as though it belonged to us. Chris whispered, Did either of you do this? Daniel shook his head, pale. No way, I swear. We stood frozen, staring at it, and then we heard it, faint, muffled, a slow rhythmic sound of breathing, coming from inside. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I couldn't move. None of us could. The sound was steady, calm, as if whoever or whatever was inside was asleep. We didn't open it. We couldn't. Instead, we backed away slowly and pretended it wasn't there. The rest of the day, we tried to laugh it off, forcing jokes, pretending it was some bizarre trick of our imagination. But none of us went near that second tent. When night came again, we barely slept. Every rustle, every breeze, sounded like someone unzipping a flap or stepping closer. At some point in the early morning, exhaustion finally dragged me under. When I woke, the sun was already up. I stepped outside, dreading what I might see. The second tent was gone. Not collapsed, not torn apart, simply gone. The ground where it had stood was bare, save for a faint circle of flattened grass, as though something had been sitting there watching us while we slept. We packed up and hiked out that very day, cutting the trip short. None of us spoke much on the way back. We didn't have to. We all knew the truth. That tent hadn't been abandoned. It hadn't been left behind. It had found us. Story 4. The second campfire. Oregon's forests have always had a reputation. They're vast, damp, and filled with so many miles of thick trees that even locals sometimes get lost. When the mist rolls in, the woods seem endless, as if they're swallowing you whole. That's where we decided to camp. 4 of us, away from trails, away from other people, determined to prove we could handle the wild. The first night was uneventful. We cooked over the fire, told stories, and listened to the sound of owls echoing through the trees. But the second night, that was different. It was close to midnight when we first noticed it. Through the gaps in the trees, a faint glow, orange, flickering, unmistakable. Another fire. At first, we felt relieved. We weren't alone out here after all. Maybe other campers had set up nearby. The idea was almost comforting. We sat around debating whether we should go introduce ourselves, borrow supplies, or maybe just say hello. Eventually, curiosity won. We grabbed our flashlights and made our way toward the glow. It didn't take long, maybe 5 minutes of weaving through thick brush before we found it. But when we stepped into the clearing, our stomachs sank. The fire wasn't burning anymore. It was just a circle of smoldering ashes, still warm, sending faint wisps of smoke into the night. Whoever had been here couldn't have left more than minutes ago. Yet there was no sign of them. No tents, no bags, no footprints in the dirt around the fire. Just emptiness and something else. Carved into the trunk of a nearby tree were words. Fresh, jagged, uneven. Don't turn around. We froze, staring at the warning. None of us spoke. The forest around us was utterly silent. The kind of silence that presses into your ears until it feels like you're underwater. Of course, instinct betrayed us. The moment you're told not to look, you look. We turned, and there, just beyond the glow of the dying fire, stood figures. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks. 4, maybe 5 dark silhouettes, human-shaped, but completely still. No flashlights, no gear, just shapes, standing in the blackness, as if the forest itself had grown eyes and was staring back. Run, Tyler whispered. It was barely audible, but all of us heard it. We didn't argue. We bolted, crashing through brush, scraping our arms on branches as we sprinted back toward our own camp. I don't remember breathing. I don't even remember thinking. I just remember the pounding of my heart and the certainty that if I looked back, I would see those figures chasing us. When we finally burst into our own clearing, we expected safety. The sight of our tents, our fire, our gear should have been grounding, but what we saw stopped us cold. Our fire, the one we had left burning, was gone, not just smoldering or low, completely out, nothing but black, cold ash. It was impossible. We hadn't been gone long enough for the flames to vanish completely. Someone, or something, had put it out. None of us spoke. None of us needed to. We threw our things into our packs, grabbed what we could carry, and left in the dark. Hiking out of the wilderness at night is dangerous, stupid even, but staying felt worse. We didn't stop until we reached the trailhead, hours later, exhausted, shaking, every shadow looking like it might move. Sometimes I think back to that night, and I wonder what would have happened if we hadn't turned around. If we'd obeyed the message carved into that tree, would the figures still have been there? Or had the warning not been for us, but for them? Story 5. The vanished campy last day of our trip was supposed to be the easiest. After 4 nights in the backcountry of Washington State, we were tired, dirty, and more than ready to head home. But before we packed up, Derek had one last idea. "There's a lookout point about an hour's hike from here," he said, stuffing a granola bar into his mouth. "Best view in the whole forest. We can't leave without seeing it." So the 4 of us, me, Derek, his sister Emily, and our friend Logan, left our camp behind. Our tents were pitched, our gear scattered, firewood stacked neatly beside the fire pit. We figured nothing would happen in a few short hours. The hike was peaceful, almost uneventful. We reached a lookout, and it was worth it. A breathtaking sweep of valley and mountains, the horizon painted in shades of blue and green. We sat for a while, enjoying the view, eating snacks, and talking about what we'd do once we were back in civilization. When we finally made the hike back, it was still early afternoon, but the moment we stepped into our clearing, something was wrong. Our camp was gone. At first I thought we had walked into the wrong clearing, but no. I recognized the fallen log by the edge of the site, the little stone circle we had built for the fire. It was the same spot, only everything was missing. The tents were gone, the backpacks, the food bags hanging from a tree branch, even the firewood we had stacked. The entire camp had been stripped bare as though it had never existed, except for one thing, my tent. It was still standing in the middle of the clearing, alone, untouched. The others stood frozen, eyes wide. Nobody spoke. The air felt heavier, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Finally, Logan whispered, "What the hell is this?" With trembling hands, I approached the tent. I didn't want to, but it felt like I had no choice. Slowly, I unzipped the flap and looked inside. There, lying neatly on top of my sleeping pad, was a single piece of paper. The handwriting was messy, jagged, almost frantic. The message was short: "You were not alone." I dropped it like it burned me. My throat went dry, and the others crowded around to see. Nobody knew what to say. Nobody knew what to think. Then, from the trees, came a sound, a twig snapping, then another. The unmistakable crunch of someone, or something, circling us just beyond sight. Emily gasped, grabbing Derek's arm. "Someone's out there." We spun around, flashlights raised, scanning the trees, but there was nothing. Just shadows. Just the oppressive silence of the woods. The snapping came again, closer this time. We couldn't see them, but we knew. Whoever had written that note was still here, watching. We didn't wait to find out more. In a panic, we grabbed what little remained the note, a few scattered items that hadn't been taken, and ran. We didn't stop. We didn't rest. We hiked through the night, stumbling, tripping, our nerves stretched to breaking. By dawn, we reached the trailhead, exhausted and terrified. None of us spoke on the drive home, but here's the part that still haunts me. When I unpacked what little gear I had left, I found the note again. Only this time, something was different. There was new writing on the back, scrawled in the same frantic hand. It said, "We're still here." The woods have always been a place of mystery. For some, they're a refuge. For others, they're a trap. Whether it's a stranger standing in the dark, laughter with no source, or an entire camp that simply disappears, one truth remains the same. When you camp deep in the forests of America, you are never truly alone. Thank you for listening. Sleep well if you can.